Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My task is a little bit more difficult than I imagined because you just had lunch and my job is to put you to sleep. So I hope I don't do that really. The topic that I'm going to cover is a little bit different from what you had been listening to in the morning, and that's about business continuity management. And you'll just wonder, why are we talking about business continuity management when we are talking about disasters? And where does that all fit in? And I hope I will start to make sense and how it all fits in and why it becomes very relevant for us to look at business continuity as well when we talk about disaster reduction as well. We had a significant event, the 9/11, and this event, though I don't like to talk about this because it has some painful memories to a lot of people, the reason I put this up is because this event made many businesses look up. They started to think about business continuity in a much more structured sense. The reason being, out of the 950 odd companies which are housed in these two buildings, about 650 of them closed down within 18 months after this incident. And that was a striking reminder of the importance of ensuring business continuity today. We are familiar with other forms of disruptions. We're familiar with fires. I'm pretty sure that you've been discussing fires and explosions and tsunamis and floods and so on, and also probably pandemics. I didn't hear the first session, but I would have thought that you would have discussed all of these. Well, how do these disruptions affect us when we are running businesses? And why it is so important for businesses to consider the impact of these disruptions and how does it all tie up to a larger picture? I remember when I was in Mumbai, that was on the 25th of July 2005, an unprecedented amount of rain, it was actually a cloudburst, occurred, and within hours, parts of Santa Cruz, they were flooded. And my company's office, I was working for a different organization then, my company's office was located in Kalina, which is part of Santa Cruz. And though the building itself wasn't affected, there weren't any floodwaters near about the building. However, there was a major problem which took place for the business. What happened then was the floodwaters were covering the electrical distribution switches, and the distribution company switched off the power. Now, how does that impact me? The servers for this company were sitting on the 6th floor, and one would think that they were pretty safe. And what I had done as part of my business was that I provided for uninterrupted power supply for a period of about 8 hours, because Mumbai generally has a fairly reliable power supply situation as compared to the rest of India. So 8 hours, I assume, that were pretty good to take care of any disruption in the power supply. What actually happened was that because the power company switched off the power to the buildings, we didn't have power. So obviously the servers went down. And the entire work for this company was taking place through connected to the servers, and they were all interconnected. The whole Indian operations was connected through servers in Mumbai and then through the gateways and into the rest of the servers around the world. And so everything came to a standstill for about 8 days. I didn't really evaluate what kind of loss that had, and what kind of impact it had, but I'm pretty sure that we lost several customers. We also lost a lot of man hours doing nothing, and so that was a big loss. And I'm pretty sure that many companies have faced similar kind of situations. This happens to be the coronavirus, which is the SARS virus, and I recollect in the year when SARS was prevalent, I had to travel to Southeast Asia as part of my job because those countries were reporting into me. When I was traveling into Singapore, the Changi airport normally is an extremely busy airport. You see thousands of people there at any point of time. But in those trips, there were hardly anybody that you could see. In the hotel, for instance, where I used to stay at the Traders, one would normally see about 180 to 100 people having breakfast. But in those days, there would be hardly about 4 or 5 people sitting having breakfast. And just imagine the kind of impact the lack of people, lack of business people visiting Singapore has on the economy of Singapore. Also the tourists. Singapore depends on business and tourism. So you can imagine an entire nation being impacted dramatically. And that's one of the reasons why the government of Singapore has addressed these things in a much, much more proactive manner than many other governments around the world. Some of the disruptions we almost forgot. Yeah, there was a fraud in this big company called WorldCom. This WorldCom was the second largest provider of telecom services in the United States before it, of course, went down. And due to accounting fraud, this company just disappeared. And what happens is, if a company today disappears, it has a rippling effect on businesses across the world. We are familiar with the subprime problems in the financial industry and the kind of impact that even Indian banks have faced, not to a very large extent, but definitely there has been a very major significant impact. So we mustn't forget that it's not just disasters, it's not just the floods, it's not just the fires that we must think about, not the earthquakes we must think about. We must think about something beyond these things, because now you'll just imagine, why are we talking this? Why are we so interested that businesses should continue to be running even despite they face difficulties? The reason is very simple. We all depend on businesses. We depend on that. The countries depend on that. Economies depend on that. The well-being of all of us. The entire globe depends on ensuring that we manage businesses very effectively, and in a robust manner. So these kind of stories are something that we must be careful about. We also heard other stories, the Enron story, again something similar. But what about this? Do we think about this as a disaster? Possibly not. Maybe a few of you wouldn't even have thought that this is a disaster. And what is the story behind this? This is an actor who is dying a natural death at the good age of 77. He could have lived a few years more, but he dies a natural death. And nobody was involved in that. And one would never imagine in the city of Bangalore there was riots. Things got burnt up. And just imagine, Bangalore is the home of several very critical, business process outsourcing partners who give their services. Their processes are given to companies in the Americas or in Europe and so on. And just imagine the kind of impact those companies would have had if these companies located in Bangalore weren't able to supply their services in a consistent manner. So these kind of things are also things that one needs to think about when we think about business continuity. The influenza, the bird flu, we talk about it, and we talk about it to death. But I just remember reading a week ago that a significant thing happened in China recently, and that was that 2 people contracted this disease. And the doctors are saying it mutated, and it is now being transmitted from human to human. That was probably the first known example where a son passed on this infection to his father. The son, however, died. The father is still alive. But the scary thing here is that it is just like a common cold. It's an influenza. And it happens all across the world. I mean, we are familiar with several types of the common cold kind of things, where we get infected. Somebody sneezes into their hand, and they touch a knob, and you touch the knob, and you get it. Or they get on board a plane, or they get into a bus, or they get into